Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women. On this show, you will learn how to create wealth through real estate the blissful way. That means with very little stress and very little time. We talk about strategies, mindset, heart set, money smarts, resources, and so much more to ensure you're able to create the success you most deeply desire. Now, here's your host, Monica Sawyer.
Today, I am so excited to welcome to the show Mike Denman. Mike is an award-winning filmmaker based out of Colorado who has worked in marketing and advertising for video games since 2011 and real estate since 2015. He's been at the forefront of technological advancements in connecting people to content through the internet via apps like Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and too many others to mention. He launched stradvertising.com in 2022 in order to help educate real estate investors on the power of advertising. Adapting his real estate advertising tactics to encourage higher amounts of web traffic to short-term rental listings was possible due to his years of iterating on the process. He has been a real estate investor for 4 years. Hello, Mike. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Monica. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here on your podcast. So thank you.
Well, yes, of course. I'm so happy to have you. And ladies, you've met Mike before. I actually played a panel that I did with Mike with Laura Powers. A few months ago. That's how I met Mike. So you've already heard his great voice and his greater advice on real estate investing. And through that conversation, I realized he had so much more to offer you ladies. So I wanted to have him on the show. So Mike, thank you for joining us again. This is going to be really awesome.
I'm very excited. And honestly, like after meeting a lot of these other real estate investors, I'm like, man, there's a lot of people out there that they almost have it. They almost know all the things and they just need a little bit of help and a little bit of guidance to be able to really see some of that success, especially with a lot of the short-term rental investors that I work with directly. That's where I'm like, finding most of the actual level of information flow is not really there. And I'm like, well, this has got to be something that we help people with. So yeah, I'm happy to help people learn how to do this stuff. It's good to compete with the big boys.
Yeah, it's good. Absolutely. Could you give us again, I know you said it in the panel before, but just kind of remind my audience, why did you choose short-term rentals, Mike?
This is completely not even me choosing it in the first place. So like my partner, Patricia, she's an incredible real estate investor who, when we first started doing real estate investing, we were like renting out a room in our house. And we even like Airbnb'd our master bedroom to just like see what that would do. And we were able to even get like 2 different people renting from us at the same time. So we were like sleeping in kids' rooms and like moving all around. It was like a whole all those shell games, moving it around. But like when Patricia and I started really investing in property, we were doing long-term rentals. And here in Colorado, the market was very challenging for rents. And so we were like, I think in 2021, we were really assessing what our cash flow was. And we were like, $400 a month maybe getting out of the long-term rentals, charging thousands of dollars in rent even for these places. And so we're like, okay, well, let's really make an assessment. So I did a bunch of spreadsheets mapped out over like 30 years. I was like, okay, well, if we sell it and what the equity, what we could do with it, and if we buy like a bunch of long-term rentals. And Patricia ended up reading Avery Carl's book, Long-Term Wealth or Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. And so then she was like, I've got to do these short-term rental things. And this is a whole new kind of way of approaching it. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And I really didn't even think too much about it after that. I was like, cool. And then we started doing the whole real estate selling and get the properties done. And through the appreciation game, we had like 250,000 to work with. They were able to 1031 exchange into some short-term rentals. So we were like, okay, let's go shopping. And so as Patricia was going through and finding like different properties, she found this beach property that was in Texas, in Crystal Beach, that like was just put onto the market. Someone had looked at, and our real estate agent had been like, oh yeah, you guys should check this out. And it was just gorgeous. This gorgeous place. It was like $925,000. It was on the beach. It was like, wow, this is crazy amounts of money. Our own house that we live in is not even like that much money. Like we have I think it's like valued at like 660,000 right now, but we bought it for like 420. So it's like, definitely a different time. The appreciation in Colorado has been really nice. So it's definitely been helpful. But the short-term rental selection process, actually, that was one of the best things that Patricia was like, okay, so the viability of the location. She did AirDNA to see how well the prospective comparable properties are going to do in terms of like how much revenue they bring in through Airbnb, that kind of thing, through Vrbo. And so we found this Crystal Beach property. We were like, all right, this is great. And we ended up getting like another property that the Real Estate Robinsons, Tony Robinson, he was sharing on his Instagram that like they had just flipped a house in Joshua Tree. And so Patricia was like, oh my God, sold. And then it ended up actually going and buying that house that they just listed and flipped. So we bought the Real Estate Robinson's second flip in Joshua Tree. And there was like a whole bunch of stuff that we wanted to change in that. We wanted to put in a second bathroom. And so we ended up launching the first short-term rental in its first place. And I think February of 2022. And then the Joshua Tree one, which we sort of launched, I think in June, really as a soft launch because we had people working on it. We didn't really want to have that whole thing going. But reason I stepped in is the whole short-term rental itself was after the first 3 initial short-term rental bookings, which Airbnb was like, hey, 20% off and you can get these things. More people come to it. They dump about 3,000 to 5,000 people onto your listing when you first launch an Airbnb, just so that way there's a large exorbitant amount of people that see your listing. And so the potential statistical value of that large amount of people is that someone is going to book those 3 bookings. Mm-hmm. And that's usually the statistic I use with even advertising. Out of everyone I show it to, it's about 10% end up clicking on my links. And out of those 10%, maybe 1% to 2% of those actually book, or they'll save it, or they'll share it with their family, which I don't really even know about until after they've already booked. And they're like, oh, we shared this with our family. And then they tell me about it. And so there's all these kind of like anecdotal pieces of it. But Patricia came to me and she's like, we need to have bookings. We have these mortgages. What are we going to do? I was like, isn't this whole new short-term rental thing? Like, is it on the things? Like, I don't know. And so I really didn't know too much about the short-term rental ecosystems or how those even worked on the platforms like Airbnb and Vrbo and Booking.com. I was like, what? But I was like, oh, I'll just run some ads. It'll be fine. And she's like, don't just tell me you're going to run ads. And she was like, this is stressful. Like, aren't you taking this seriously? I'm like, nah, it's cool. I'll just run ads. I'll just like spend $100. I'll take 10 days and I'll see if it's a viability. And then I started getting bookings, and it was like I spent like $2.43 at one point, and I got like a $6,000 booking, and I was like, you know what, this really feels
that ROI is pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty all right. I was like, that's pretty cool. And another time I started running the ads, and I spent like $4 and some change, and I got like a $3,000 booking. I was like, I do feel that there's viability. And some of them, the ads show me that people are not interested in some of the photos I've used. And then I can see which photos I need to put up as the front photos. I also use ads as a market research tool for which headlines or which titles even work to get people to click. And so like I try spreading that information back onto my Airbnb, using it. So it's like a cyclical piece of the puzzle. I just end up like having this inform this, and then I test it out here, and I throw a bunch of things out to test it. And so my getting into the short-term rental game was literally just as we needed to get more bookings. And so I was like, well, I think I could do that. I've been doing real estate marketing and advertising for a while, but I've never done short-term rentals. And then I started doing it. I started talking to other short-term rental people, and I was like, oh man, people are having a hard time with bookings. I was like, I know exactly how stressful it is not to be able to feel confident that you're going to be able to pay that, several $1,000 mortgage. And it's like, oh, if I don't have money coming in to pay it, I have to pay it out of my own pocket. It's like, this is already like, I don't think that I want to have that going. And so I really put the effort into dialing in and focusing on how to help short-term rental people get those bookings. And I've been doing this mostly since like, I guess June. I've been helping people, and I've gotten over a few dozen different campaigns I've been able to run for folks, getting them bookings. I do a lot of other kind of like assessments of where the people are coming from, so they can actually find where their clientele is coming from. And ultimately through ads, you can shape and create the ways in which people are introduced to your own system. And what you offer is like basically different from other people, But when you look at it on the Airbnb system, where it's like all these familiarities, some of them are super similar. Like, for example, if you have people who are invested in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, some of those cabins are like, they look very similar. They have some views are similar. And so there's not really a lot of differentiation. So when people are like scrolling through Airbnb, like looking at all this stuff, I think the hard part is they get like, analysis paralysis. Like, I don't know which one's better. Like, they all look kind of roughly the same. There's A-frames and there's all these other cabins. And what the advertising does is it takes people from other platforms and then it puts them into your listing. So they're not even actually seeing other listings. And that's one thing that I think is really helpful, because I'm able to charge more money per nightly on my listings when I run ads. And I think over the summer, it was like at the highest, it was like $379 more a night than comparable listings in my area. And so I'm like, okay, if I'm bringing people to this and those few out of the 10% like my place, and out of those, the 1 or 2% book, I'm getting my rates. But then the people who don't book with me, and they're looking around in that local area, then they're booking with my neighbors. And so I have an indirect benefit to the area that I'm advertising to, because whatever the person that I showed the ad to didn't meet my criteria, they still are looking now for a vacation when they hadn't even thought about vacationing beforehand. So it's like, yeah, it all started with this whole like need, and then it ended up being some sort of thing. I was like, yeah, this is a viable thing. So that's when I started the business. I was like, this is going to be something that I can just have and I help, and it's not even like my main thing, but now I'm starting to do it more and more. And I feel like it's more fun and exciting because I like helping people, especially I like helping people make the money. And I think that the blissful side of things is like when you have those systems in place and working, and they're just doing what they're supposed to do, so that way you're not stressed out. Right. It's like those stress moments. I'm like that. Watching Patricia go through like some of the stress moments, I'm just like all casual, like, no worries, it's all good. Trust the universe.
That probably drove her crazy.
No. It was rough. I felt really bad. I was like, but I'm not trying to be like, just all like hunky dory about it. I'm like, literally, I'll just run ads. It's what I do. But
it's funny. So it is funny, Mike, that you talk about sort of putting in the systems to make it less stressful. And I've said on this show before, systems really are the key to bliss, because when you have a system done, your processes, that things are going to be handled. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? You can hand it off to a VA if you so choose, or to somebody else to help you.
Right.
And you also have a pretty good idea of what your results are going to be like. And certainly you have to revisit the systems. You have to revisit results, like things are constantly changing and expanding. But I have said many times that it's the system and the process that creates the bliss, because it reduces your stress. What do you say? Like exponentially.
Right? Yeah, really, it does. And I think that like when we feel the stress of paying our own mortgages sometimes, and even though it's like, yes, we work, we have jobs, we have the money, it goes in, that's the system. The job is the system to then facilitate the housing. And so like all these things are already built into our own ecosystems, right?
Right.
And then the investing side of it is like, how do you make investing really work for you? It's like you listen to the experts, you really take a lot of information in, but those systems are all in the same thing. It's like, you build out your like Airbnb and Vrbo and your booking.com, and then you have an owner res that connects to those, that creates the one calendar, so that way everyone's not double booking a calendar piece, because having a double book weekend is really expensive and it can take away your superhost status if you end up canceling things. So it's like there's challenges that you want to avoid. And so those systems create those ease of operating that make it so that way you can do far less and you can enjoy life more. And then you can see, oh, I'm getting far more than I would through even my stocks right now. And so it's like it's different. And I think that the real estate is really the number one way to increase wealth in America. And it's like, if you really want to increase it and you want to succeed, you got to do something. Right. And I always think back to the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, where it's like 80% of businesses fail in the first 2 years. And these investment properties, like when you look at it, it's like they are little mini businesses. And so if you don't treat them like a business, you're not going to see success out of it. And it's just going to be stressful. And you're going to be one of those like 80% that fail. And I think the statistic I saw from Bigger Pockets was like over 60% of Airbnb owners sell their Airbnbs within the first year of doing business or something like that. And so I think
that's an interesting statistic
in that. And so I think that like when really people are getting into it, if you don't know what you're getting into, And Patricia will say this all the time too, and she's like, it's not for everybody, and I can account for that. It's not for everybody. It is a job, and it is being hospitable. And if you're not good with people, and hire someone that is good with people, right? So it's like you have to have that system, so that way whatever your faults are, whatever your ailments in terms of dealing with the hospitality side of things, like yeah, I even go like we go to town on towels. Like we have like more towels than even reasonably possible in our short-term rentals. And I think that we've gotten so many people who are like, I want to leave a 10-star review because of the number of towels you guys had.
I love
It's
that.
like this, yeah, it was like this moment where like we're like, okay, well, we go into this short-term rental stuff and we're thinking, how do we want our vacations to appear? And how blissful would it be if this was available for other people? And so that's why we stock that many towels. And it's like with hair and all those things, sometimes you need multiple towels to do stuff. We've got kids
Totally.
and all this, like you've got wrangling, there's a whole bunch of stuff. You can't have just like one towel to use.
Right.
So I mean, like, you really have to think about how you want to be perceived, especially as a business owner and a hospitality provider, as service
And
of
what
this
and
vacation, right?
what makes your property special, right? Like
Yeah,
those are the sorts of things that's all marketing, right? Like
it really is.
towels, like what. And I actually, so I used to run Airbnb too out of one of my bedrooms. We used to
Oh,
rent out one of our
nice.
bedrooms, and that was one of the things that we did. People loved the towels. We always had like really fun towels, like I had polka dots or paisleys, and they were
That's
really
good.
plush, and like people love the towels. It was the weirdest thing. I was
They're
like,
like,
what is this? But
can I take one?
that's right. That's right. Where did you get these? It's so funny. So I want to ask you really quickly, Mike. So you said you do Airbnb, VRBO, and what was the calendaring system that you
Oh,
used to
owner
match that?
res.
What is it called?
Owner res. It's like OWNERREZ.com.
Res. Okay.
Owner
Owner
res,
Res.
owner reservation. And that is our
.com.
main, I think it's, yeah, it's the .com. It is our main connecting piece that does
Okay.
the automation between the different short-term rental platforms. So for pricing, calendar availability, images, text, all of those elements you can change on those individual platforms, but it takes time and
Hmm.
effort to change on those platforms. But you can actually even pay on a res, like it's like I don't know, $500 or something like that, and they set all the stuff up for you. And there's like emails that come out of there, automated emails, like when you have a lease agreement you need signed, and all these different things. So there's really cool features in that, and it also even has, I think, like if you pay a little bit more monthly, there's a direct booking site, so
Hmm.
you don't have to pay to have a separate website built out there. And I think that for direct booking sites, like it's a formidable kind of experience doing direct booking. You're like literally becoming the hotel, and that's all the liability and scariness of that. And there's things that you have to pay attention to for direct booking, which is why I'm like, I just send most of my traffic to Airbnb right
Me
now.
too.
And
Yeah.
also when I send traffic to Airbnb, I'm inorganically increasing the traffic flow to that listings view page. And
Right.
so by increasing the views of that, I'm telling Airbnb's search algorithm this is a popular property.
So put it
And so
on the
it
top.
raises in rank,
Yeah.
and it makes it so that way it's successful in terms of both organic searches as well as your ad searches. So that way the ads are influencing the ability for Airbnb to see you as a viable property. And so those flows, especially since Airbnb changed things in the summer of 2022, it's really crucial to have some sort of way in which you can stand out on the Airbnb platform, because what Airbnb wants now is they want the really unique places with the very strange experiences, and they want to promote all those things more so than just the run-of-the-mill places that are like, perfectly reasonable to actually vacation in. So
Hmm.
I think that it's like, yeah, each of the systems are all different ecosystems themselves, and there's a whole different Oprah episode we can go into those things. I personally don't think that the VRBO clientele leaves reviews quick enough, so I don't even push my VRBO. Although I think we get like 30% of our bookings from VRBO for our
Interesting.
Crystal Beach property. I don't get any of those bookings for my Joshua Tree property. And so I
Interesting.
think that there's difference in the type of person who's using those things. And I think Airbnb is almost like the Kleenex in terms of brand recognition for the short-term rental game
Hmm.
itself. So as investors, when we're going through it, it's like, yeah, you want to be on all the all of them. Well, like whatever ones you are on, you're going to have opportunity for people to find you. And in the Venn diagram of the internet, like there's all these people that go to certain sites or all of them. And so that's a way in which you can really kind of stand out by just standing up on all of them.
Right. So I want to actually start digging into the actual advertising piece because first of all, thank you for the algorithm update because I was not aware of that. Like everything else, right? Whether it's Amazon or Google or
Changes.
Facebook or whatever, everybody's updating their algorithms and they have a definite slant on how things are going. So I wasn't aware of that update. So thank you so much for
Yeah,
that.
it was a massive one. They call it the summer release.
Okay.
It was detrimental. I couldn't even find my property listed on Airbnb.
Oh my.
And I'm like a beachfront, ocean view, and for their beachfront category, ocean view, they didn't show my property at all. And so like there's all these other things about those systems not working to their full effect of what they should do when they make those changes that doing ads has just been what I've been succeeding at. So it's ultimately, I don't even need to worry about being on that platform as much. Obviously the location is now findable, but it's like, it's in those moments, it's a little freaky when you just drop off the
I've
map.
had that happen too. I was a super host and my property was always in the top 3 and then suddenly it disappeared. I was like, what happened here?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting. Anyway, so let's talk about advertising. So since that's your genius, so talk to us about creating a digital presence to compete effectively. You've talked a little bit about it already, kind of high level, but give us a little bit more on what to do.
I published this little book. It's very tiny. It's very thin. Look how thin this is. It's so thin. It's only 37 pages. But basically, I made a quick little guide on how to excel at short-term rental advertising. And when you think about like the digital presence and what people really succeed at, it's like, yeah, well, where are people hanging out online? And right now we have kind of a few different areas that people are really online. And it's like Meta has Facebook and Instagram and some other different websites that are all kind of like, in that circle and sphere. Then you have the other ones like, Pinterest, YouTube,
TikTok.
Even TikTok. TikTok is a great landscape because it's so many people are on TikTok right now. It is like excessive amounts of people. So I think that like if you're active on TikTok and you're creating content around whatever you're investing, and I have a friend doing like syndication stuff as well, and he's going to start doing content on TikTok teaching people about how to do syndications where you all pool money in and you can buy a property together kind of thing. So I think that there's a lot of different avenues with that are also being used for NFTs, the non-fungible tokens. And so I think that those are another areas that I've been helping people with as well, not just with advertising. But for the ad systems, it's like, okay, you can operate on these ecosystems like Meta, and is what I really like to use for a lot of the short-term rental or even just real estate investing stuff in general. And so on those with Meta ads, I can literally create an advertisement that has an image or a video, and I usually choose up to like 10 images or videos for one ad campaign. And then I have like 5 different pieces of text, which is usually, I like to use people's reviews. And so whenever someone stays at your property, if you have a short-term rental, or if you have an investment property that is like a commercial property or something else, and you have some sort of statement of a actual patron or a customer of that, they're like, oh, I love this. This is amazing. I love staying here. There's whatever it is. People trust what other people are saying more than what we're telling them as the actual owners. And it's not necessarily like, come visit my thing, it's the best. But it's like, hey, just see what people are saying about this. And then you make your decision based on that. And that helps people, I think, make those real cinchers. And so you run ads with a bunch of different combinations of text, little calls to action, create those little moments to use that digital presence to then tell people about it. And actually, oftentimes people will say, well, you have to be active on social media. You have to do all these things. And I'm like, well, I don't really have a lot of time, and I'm not very active on some things. And I know the viability of being active on a social media platform like Facebook, like if I have a business page, if I post a bunch of things there every single day, I can't even promise I'd get much action or activity out of any of those posts. People are oftentimes like, I don't see the viability of it. But you run ads, it's like your posts are actually getting to people instead of them having to find it through all the different things. And actually Facebook, the way it works is like from 2018, actually this is when they made the change, the first thing you see is like events and groups. So the things your friends are doing, the groups that you're in, and people are talking about stuff that you care about. And then you see your friends' stuff. And then below, all the way at the bottom, you see business pages. And so those business pages, that's the viable thing that used to be what worked, and we could tell people about stuff. I just now post a few things on there and treat it like a digital billboard. And so ultimately, I have enough information, enough photos on that Facebook meta page for people to then say, oh, this is what this is. If it's a short-term rental, they see where it is, the photos of it, some of the things to do in the area, that kind of stuff, and also the link to go book. So then I use ads to just tell people about the booking page. And I literally don't point them to the Facebook page. I tell them about the link. They see the Facebook page in that ad so they can click on it. And this is funny because I use a lot of different like KPIs or key performance indicators to see whether or not these ads are really working. And from the Facebook side of it, it's like the number of clicks I have on the ad is one thing, but then the number of shares, interactions, like responses, reactions, loves, hearts, all those little things, engagement with people actually talking about it, commenting, telling their friends and tagging them in it. Like there's all this activity that happens and it's lovely. And when people save the posts, I'm like, oh, this is golden because I know that someone saved it. They might not be a client of mine now, but they're probably going to book at some point. And if they're aware of it, and since they clicked on my ad, I can target just the people who've clicked on my ads. So I can say, hey, remember the ad you clicked on? You should totally take a vacation. You deserve it. You're amazing. So like when you have those moments, it's like these ads, it's just really doing all the posts for you. And so like you could literally set up an ad campaign, all the different combinations of modular like text and images and video and all those things, Facebook's algorithm will put together for you. And it will find the most performing, the most clickable, the most liked, the most effective combination of all those things. And with that, you can actually see a lot of really cool data. And so you can start seeing, okay, well, what are people really interested in? And I found when I was starting with my Crystal Beach place, I was like, oh, this is a luxury place. It's got like vaulted ceilings. It's great. I'm like, this is better than anything I've ever like lived in myself. And then when I started using luxury or any kind of like, things I would normally do for luxury real estate, people weren't really clicking on it. But when I used family friendly or fun for the whole family, people clicked on those things in droves. And so I was like, oh, I see who my clients are. They're people who have kids, people who have families that are bringing people together. And ultimately those little friendship circles are also part of that too. So it's not just families, but friends. It's really popular keywords that I then put into my listings titles. So that way I'm like, oh, okay, so this triggers more people to click on this. If I update my listing, it's going to then match what my ad said. So the ad's informing what I put onto my listing itself. And the top photos go in the forefront of those listings. And on my Instagram page, I have like, some of those I dole out. And actually, we don't really have much activity in terms of us posting on some of our Instagram pages. One, which our Joshua Tree property, that LA, San Diego, Las Vegas crowd who usually rents in Joshua Tree, they like Instagram more. And so that's something that we just organically post on Instagram for those ecosystems to work a little bit more. I don't really see a viability too much of it quite yet, but I know that it's nice to have some of those things working out. And
how did you know that? How did you figure that out, Mike, that the Las Vegas, Los Angeles, those sorts of markets for the Joshua Tree property, like Instagram, how did you figure that out as opposed to Facebook?
When Facebook runs any of the ads, it's actually going to send them out to Instagram, to Facebook. It has all of those kind of arranged. With Instagram, I saw the clicks were far less. Actually, I spent money just straight up on Instagram, like $100 just to see the viability of it. And out of that $100 spend, I didn't get any kind of results in terms of bookings. And so that made me feel it wasn't necessarily a viable source for new ads and new bookings from those ads. And that's something that I think might change, and it always flows, right? There's an ebb and flow to things. And so I've even started doing ads on Pinterest, and I can talk more about that a little later, but there's ways in which you can reach the audience that you're trying to reach. And there's mechanisms that they're paying attention to online, like you even mentioning TikTok, right? TikTok itself, there's a lot of people on there, but I'm not necessarily sure how many people are actually going to be booking vacation rentals or even doing real estate investing. So it's like the demographic, who is actually booking and when they're clicking on your ads, those things all really kind of come into factor.
Right. And I think so. I put a lot of effort into Facebook for a while, the beginning parts of my business, not for real estate, but more for real estate investing for women and bringing women together and community and that sort of thing. And it was so interesting the level of effort that it took to try to get things moving was so massive, and it's not my expertise, and it became such a chore for me. Like, it was not fun. I was spending too much time there. Like you say, Mike, we're all busy, right? And
Yeah.
you want to see some sort of results. You put in time, energy, you want to see some results if you're going to continue. And I found that with Facebook, I just was not getting the results that were really helping my ladies. Um,
Yeah.
and ditto on Instagram. I actually really spend a lot of time on Instagram, but I don't post a lot anymore because I just didn't, with a huge amount of time, I wasn't getting any kind of following or whatever. So I'm a little bit of a social media fail, which
Not a
I'm
fail.
okay with. Like, I just kind of decided it's okay to be a social media fail, right? But it's interesting to me that you're talking so much about ads, because and that you don't have to really be active on social media, and still doing the ads is really, really effective.
Yeah, and the cool thing, and I think that you're not a failure on this stuff. Any kind of like effort you put in, all of that effort, even though you don't see a value, still has some value to someone out there. And so when those people find you and they go back through your past posts, they're like, oh, I get a sense of this. And I have more of a rapport with you because you do that stuff. And that heavy lifting up front really is viable. But really, the ads, like, yeah, it is like you can literally set this up. Facebook figures it out. It's probably going to deliver like over 3,500 different ads. And it's like when you think about the thousands of advertisements that are going out there, and people are being shown based on their interests and their demographic area and who are targeted. And sometimes I'll target just one city or different cities.
Mm-hmm.
I rarely target like the whole United States. I'll go in and I'll find like specific areas where there's certain investors, certain people looking for certain properties or different things of that nature. And I'll find where the guests are based on like a large blanket area. I send ads, and then I see where the clicks are coming from as specific cities, and then I drill in and I only advertise to those cities. And so like I try to make it so that way I'm learning stuff with the ads. Even with Facebook itself, if you have some posts that have bigger interests, video posts. So there's some things you can test out on social media without actually running them as ads. But I like to run them as ads to test them out before I put them on social media. So it's like you can do both,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that it informs me of the other. And one of the best things right now is like the videos where it's like a portrait size. Like those videos are more converting for Facebook's own statistical analysis of how people are interacting with content. Like everyone I talk to at Facebook, like I usually talk to them like a couple times a week, and so their ad support team, and they're always, at least this summer, they've been promoting Reels, and for the most effective ads right now, they're 15-second ads that go between Reels, and so they're just like a 15-second ad that just video portrait size with your phone and you film it, saying what you do and where you're at. And even if you're an investor trying to get other investors to pool money for a syndicate, these are different mechanisms that you can do just to tell people about what you're doing. Because that's the number one thing about real estate stuff. No matter what real estate thing you're doing, you talk about it. And if you talk about it, you don't know who else might be interested in it or who else might be doing something in that or who else might be interested in just investing money with you that you can use their money to do things with. So I mean, like there's all these different options that are viable ways of making money that you don't even have to be doing all the hard work. But you know, for those people who are doing that kind of syndication thing, there's beautiful opportunities. And for the people doing short-term rental stuff, like there's amazing opportunities for people just to be reminded of taking vacations. And you can have that as like, you're like, oh, I provide this luxury experience for people who have vacations. And there's all these people doing really amazing things with their own properties. Like they have like galactic game rooms, the Patrick Switek's room down in the Palm Springs area. He's with STR Nation. Like there's all these different companies that are building themselves out about designing the different experiences of what makes a cool vacation. And so like now that we're all thinking about it, we spent some pandemic times not really going anywhere and going to some of these places, and the viability of some of the short-term rentals went up during that pandemic because a lot of hotels closed. But now hotels have been doing smear campaigns. They're like anti Airbnb and other short-term rentals, like, oh, they're spooky and you have to take out the garbage yourself and all these things. And it's like the worst case scenarios. But I've seen some people who have like, minimum night stays that have not really seen much results from advertising. And where it's like, yeah, if your property is not viable for the whatever variable the person needs to have, if it's calendar availability or the location or the amount of beds you have, it's like, I can't guarantee that there'll be bookings with any of the ads I do, but I know that we can try and we can find out. And the added benefit of not having to run your own social media makes it so it's easier and you have something running. And actually on advertising, usually what I do is I spend $10 a day. So for each of my properties, it's like $300 a month for a property. And if I run people's ads, I usually charge them like kind of like a one-to-one based on what that is, usually of the ad spend. But yeah, I think for the most part, when I spend the most, even on advertising, I've spent like $700 in a month. And I'm like, okay, well, I got X amount of money in bookings by telling more people about it. And so it's a justifiable cost for me. And when I think about the time I save by not having to post a bunch to get people to even pay attention to it, I'm like, oh, I had all that time to spend with my 3-year-old daughter, which is far more important for me to, ensure that I'm paying attention to her than, worrying about just posting on my Instagram and Facebook pages.
Right. You,
So yeah, it's great.
you said something, Mike, that I want to go back to is, so you said, so vertical or portrait size
Yeah, portrait size, like the up
video.
and down.
And are people posting them in their reels and their lives, or are they posting them in their groups, or how are they doing that?
When they post them live, it goes onto stories. And so that's a viable solution for those. And when they post them even just as a story on Facebook or Instagram, it does different things. You can actually take the same video and post it to Facebook stories, to Instagram stories, to TikTok, to YouTube.
Hmm.
There's all these different places you can put that same video. And
Hmm.
so that same video could act as a tendril in there. Actually, I really like YouTube for a lot of this stuff as well.
Hmm.
I don't know the viability of what people are booking for on YouTube, but I know that if you're looking for other real estate people or doing investing, there is a lot of information on YouTube. And so they're making YouTube shorts, which is
Hmm.
essentially the same thing as the stories on Facebook or Instagram. So it's like also the Snapchat is where that all kind of originated from. But
Hmm.
that's not a viable ecosystem for this. This is really good for video games. But TikTok is where a lot of like everyone is right now. And so even if as investors they're like, I'm gonna try that out. TikTok has an advertising opportunity. You
Hmm.
literally just create an ad account, you pay them per view, and it's like a whole video you have to submit up. It's usually a pretty simple process, I think. But I've been doing ads for so long online, it's not
Hmm.
easy for a lot of people. And even actually setting up Facebook ads, it's like it takes some effort to get some things going, but because it's a tricky regulated kind of system, and sometimes you have to like even submit your business information to be verified so that way you can advertise. And Facebook is
Hmm.
getting really touchy about things, especially if it's around any kind of political season, about ad accounts in general and like what you're
Hmm.
advertising. So it's like it's crucial.
So
um,
is a story the same as a reel?
no, but it goes in the same spot.
Okay, it
So a
does.
reel is like a minute or longer video that basically lives in the stories environment.
Got
And
it.
that story environment, like Facebook stories and even on Instagram, they separated out reels to their own section now. It's still being put into the regular post areas. So like everything with these platforms, all it changes. Everything
Right.
changes and it always adapts to new things. If someone has a cool new product idea, they're like, "Oh, let's do that everywhere." Like there was a whole Clubhouse thing that came out while we're all, at home during the pandemic and everyone's just talking, having voice chats. And then
Hmm.
all of the platforms started having that kind of thing as well. And so I think that the hot thing right now is Reels. And so if
Okay.
it's a minute long version of a video that's shot in that 9 by 16 format, that is all that you really need to do. And if you're not doing those reels, you can just post a little bit. But if you don't want to post those reels and you want to have it doing through ads, you just make the ad that 9 by 16 video, and then you just submit it up to be included as a reel, and then all of those will show up, which leaves you to not have to worry about doing it, not have to worry about doing a lot of them, and you can have just one doing most of the work for you. And then it takes a lot of that stress of having to create a lot of content. And I think
Yes.
actually that's sort of like my partner Patricia was getting like really stressed. She's like, "Oh, I have to make content today and all this stuff." I was like, "It's okay, just like make one or two that you really like, maybe even five, and then we can see." I'm a big fan of testing, so like I like to spaghetti test everything. So if I'm gonna like throw a bunch of stuff at a wall, then I'm gonna see okay the two or three things that worked really well, and I'm gonna keep doing those things. if you iterate on the process and you just make it so that way it's even better each time, I can't guarantee that that'll always be the same thing that works really well. But usually after people work with me, I've got like at least a good idea. I can turn a switch on, and then all of a sudden they have ads running, and then they have a bunch of traffic going to their listing. And if the listing has things on it that make people want to book it, then great. But if they have like barely anything on it, like low information, they're low images, they're bad images, like we can find out pretty quickly if that's a viable listing. Actually, I worked with a couple guys that over the course of running ads, they determined that it was a property they needed to sell. And so like they were able to find out quickly, instead of having months and months and months and months of mortgage costs that ultimately drain some of the reserves. They can find out, okay, this is not a viable product, or maybe they just need to do a different type of investing. Maybe it's long-term or maybe it's mid-term. I really love the mid-term investing stuff, especially because of the traveling nurse kind of mentality.
Yes.
There are so many resources that those people have that we as investors provide. And so if you have a midterm rental that's near a hospital, like I know several investors, they only invest within a 500 feet to like 1,000 feet away from hospital access.
Oh,
And it's like they have patients as well as nurses who do traveling nurse stuff stay for more than 30 to whatever kind of time frame. And it's usually pretty decent money for that kind of thing. It's
Nice.
not some of the short-term rental kind of money, but it's still like you can get like 3 times the actual cost of the mortgage in rent. So I mean, like as an investor, it's like you really have to figure out like which one of these areas do I really want to do it in. I'm still a big fan of long-term rentals. Like we have I think 4 doors in Iowa, and they're 2 duplexes. And it was funny, like Patricia was like, I'll have her obviously tell this as well, but she went out to Iowa to close on one of the properties. I had a buddy who moved out there. She's like, you got to invest in Dubuque, Iowa. We're like, okay, Dubuque, Iowa, right? Oh, that's weird. But we have 2 of these like little duplexes that ultimately I think it's like $1,500 a month without having to do much as just cash flow.
Nice.
And we're like, oh, because when we started our journey, we had like $400 a month cash flow. We're like, this is tricky. And we're able to basically get like a second job's income on a monthly basis coming through, just moving some of those money to long-term rentals. But still, it's like, that ecosystem is a little bit different, and I don't do advertising too much for that. We only do ads when we're actually placing people in there, which is like, 9 to 12 months at a
Right.
time. And so
Right.
it's not too crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's loads of stuff that, I
Yeah,
think
it
that
could
it's
just go on forever. And we're actually out of time. Like we didn't get to do our 3 rapid fire questions or
Oh my
anything.
gosh. So sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I always have to make that judgment call on myself about, do we kind of move this along, or do we kind of go with the flow? And in your case, Mike, what I'm finding is there's so much knowledge in your head, and you speak in sort of this stream of consciousness. And so we get all these jewels
Last
that just kind of came out that were off topic and really amazing. So thank you for that. And ladies listening, I hope that was okay with you. Every time I'd like say, okay, now let's get to this next question, then he'd say something that I was like, what? And I'd lean in. So I hope you ladies, you had that same experience. But Mike, before we sign off, so ladies, we are going to talk about Pinterest. So Mike has had a lot of experience, as he's talked about, with, for instance, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, those guys. But he just recently started working on Pinterest. And so I wanted him to share with you that experience, because we've never had anybody talk about that on this show. So we're going to be doing that in extra. So definitely stay tuned for that. But Mike, could you tell the ladies how they can reach you?
So you can reach me. I have stradvertising.com. I'm pretty active on Facebook. I have a Facebook group, just a short-term rental marketing advice powered by BTA. Better Than Awesome is my company. It is my main umbrella company. But I'm happy to, provide help, and I have a lot of free resources. And in fact, I normally charge for this, but I'm going to give your audience a copy of my ebook on how to excel in short-term rental advertising. So it's a quick and dirty little walkthrough how to do this with my processes and how to iterate on things and a lot of my methodology. I talk about my own experience of getting into real estate stuff, but it's very short. It's like 37 pages and there's lots of pictures. But essentially, it's a quick easy start guide to get you into it. And I have a little extra bonus in there. It's a digital like presence quick start guide that tells people, okay, this is a once over, quick and dirty. This is the platforms you should get onto. This is kind of like how the ad's set up. This is a demographic you want to look at. But I'll be able to send that to everyone as an ebook offer. So we'll make sure we have a link for you guys.
Yes. And actually that link will be in the show notes, but it is stradvertising.com/Monica. So he knows you came from me. So
Perfect.
STR, that's is for short-term rental.
Yep.
So stradvertising.com/Monica. And thank you so much for giving my ladies that book. I know that it's out there. And it's normally $9.99. And it's so sweet that you're giving it to my ladies. Thank you for that, Mike.
Well, you're incredible, and I love what you're doing here. And I think that like my mom raised me right, so I'm definitely trying to be a really good ally. And I think that one of the most deserving populace to be able to have better information, to be able to compete at the higher levels, like I said earlier, even the big boys club, it's that nomenclature is totally inappropriate. So like let's make that into something where it's like, it's like the big players club, where it really is something that people don't have an association of gender with it. And I think it's very important that as a cis white man, I use whatever privilege I can to impart some benefit to people who are not in the weird privileged state that I am just by societal inheritance. And it's like, I don't do much to earn some of the things that people just inherently give me as I walk into the room. But I think that what I do have and what I've gained from that, I can impart with some pretty solid wisdom that is actionable and that can help make money. So I genuinely feel pretty confident in it. So far, everyone I've worked with, I've helped teach how to do this, or even using the book to do it. They're all very pleased on how short and concise it is and not full of a bunch of BS.
Yeah.
So I think it's,
37 pages is awesome. I actually wrote a 37-page book also. You have to get really good at making your point, right? Like it's hard, but it's really good for the reader.
Yeah, and I started like making TV commercials as one of my first like video jobs. And so like, I mean, that really high complex thing into a short distilled conversation piece is like what I've really specialized on.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for all that you've offered in this portion of the show, Mike. I can't wait to talk in extra about Pinterest.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me again. And I appreciate everyone. And if you guys have questions, feel free to reach out. My group has a lot of really great people I've been helping with as well, and they all have really good insight on their own stuff. I like information sharing, so I'm like, let's get everyone in there. I've been banned from other groups on Facebook for sharing free information. So it's like, it's just like, I like, there's a thing out there. People are really not interested in what I'm doing because it's working and it's competing with what they have, I think. And that's unfortunate, but everyone deserves to compete at some of those higher levels without having too much.
I love that. Thank you. And so ladies, stay tuned. We've got more. We're going to be talking about Pinterest in extra. So if you are subscribed, stay tuned. We've got more. And if you are not, but would like to be, go to realestateinvestingforwomenextra.com and you can subscribe there. For those of you that are leaving us now, thank you so much for spending this time with Mike and I. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, remember, goals without action are just dreams. So get out there, take action, and create the life your heart deeply desires. I'll see you soon. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to find out more about how to become a blissful millionaire, go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.